Now, there are surprisingly few varieties for this series as a whole, while the majority of those at least have something to do with the mint mark. A perfect example of this would be the 1928 S issue. Most coins were issued with the normal or the small S mint mark, indicating it's originating from the San Francisco Mint. However, a smaller number of these coins were also struck using the large S mint mark as well, classified as mint mark style number 3. The difference is quite noticeable if you compare the two side by side, especially looking at the serifs of the different styles. However, if you don't happen to have a 1928 S small dime on hand, or for comparison purposes, or if you're out in the field, an easy way to spot it would be to remember that the large S mint mark is typically positioned very close to the bottom leaf, although admittedly this is a highly relative metric. During 2018, a PCGS graded MS66 coin was sold at auction for the sum of $1,080. And then let's take a look at one of the few double dies that this series is known for, the 1936 double die obverse Mercury dime. In this case, the doubling is chiefly concentrated on the lower half of the coin, and while there is doubling on the letters of "In God We Trust," this can be a tad troublesome to actually spot, especially if the coin has seen any kind of time in circulation at all. Far easier, however, would be examining the designer's initials, where the doubling can be seen with far greater ease towards the southeast of the large W. The date is also moderately doubled in much the same manner, with the flag of the 1 displaying quite clearly. The tail of the 9 isn't entirely split, but it is nicely doubled all the same. And then the bottom halves of the 3 and the 6 should also be doubled as indicated here. In 2018, a PCGS graded coin with a grade of MS67 Plus with full bands designation was sold at auction for $1,080. And naturally, if there is a discussion about Mercury dime varieties, then there simply is only one coin that supremely rules over them all, the 1942 over 41 overdate variety. When this coin was first discovered, shortly after its release, it was initially assumed to be a re-engraved die or something similar to that effect, but this is simply and very clearly not the case at all, as this overdate is in reality a strange double die obverse coin, a rare case of class 3 or design hub doubling. An obverse die, which was initially sunk using a 1941 dated hub, was then again impressed with a 1942 dated hub to produce this spectacular variety coin. The 2 is clearly seen over the initial 1 in the date. Looking at the 4, you can again clearly see that this is a doubled die and not a re-engraved die, or even an overstruck coin, as some people have said as well. Examining the designer's initials, it becomes even more clear at this point, with the doubling seen towards the southeast. An everly popular red book listed variety that would hardly want for a buyer. In 2018, a remarkable example of this coin was sold at auction, slapped by PCGS as MS66 with a full bands designation for the amount of $120,000. So then with that, one of the earliest repunched mint mark varieties of any significant note that you are likely to encounter is the 1934 D over D variety. This is not an exceedingly well-known variety, and as such, not many have been discovered to date. The chief point of interest for this variety would be just above the top serif of the D, where you can see the same element of the first punching just towards the north, practically touching the leaves just above the mint mark. In terms of value, in 2013, a PCGS slabbed AU55 coin sold at auction for $66. Now, as the coin becomes more well known, that figure is likely to increase some though. The next coin is one from the Denver Mint instead, and as per the theme of this video, then this will be the 1945 D over D Mercury dime. Now, there is another coin where we find a D over horizontal D variety, but that is not the coin that we'll be looking at today. Instead, what we find here is the more commonplace repunched mint mark where the final placement of the D is slightly towards the southwest of the initial striking, leaving a clear outline of the first impression towards the northeast, or towards the lower end of the twig, in other words. In 2013, there was an auction of a PCGS graded MS64 coin, again with full bands, that sold for $495. One of the most spectacular, well, maybe not no, you know what? This is a very impressive repunched mint mark, and definitely one of my favorites from this series. It comes to us in the form of the 1943 S over S variety, and the repunching is really quite unmistakable, with a very bold initial S clearly seen towards the northeast of the final placement. However, closer examination of the coin in a sufficiently early die state, to be fair, should reveal that this is in reality at least a triple punched mint mark variety instead, with a small remnant of the initial serif found towards the southwest of the final position. There are also other indications that this mint mark was struck multiple times, and quite possibly as many as 4 times, but these do become more difficult to spot as the die state advances and are all ultimately somewhat unnecessary to identify the variety in the first place. So while it remains very interesting, it serves somewhat more of an academic purpose rather than a practical one at the end of the day. In 2015, a spectacular example of this particular coin, graded by PCGS as MS67 Plus with a full bands designation, was sold at auction for $2,820. Well, 1942 has certainly a lot of varieties, and indeed very attractive and valuable ones at that, for you to keep an eye out for within the Mercury dime series. Now, one that is perhaps overlooked and definitely overshadowed would be a repunched mint mark coin from the Denver Mint. The repunching is very easy to spot, as the initial strike was completely southeast of the final placement, leaving clear evidence behind both towards the bottom of the letter D and inside the cavity of the mint mark as well. Another prominent feature that you can keep an eye out for to confirm the variety for this coin would be the die crack that runs across the Rick portion of America, running across the top of the letters almost parallel towards the rim of the coin. An example graded as MS63 by PCGS was sold at auction in 2021 for $325. Then we have an extremely rare coin indeed, another repunched mint mark from the Denver Mint, and as an indication of its true rarity, the variety was not actually discovered and fully attributed until the late 1990s, and since then, only a handful of these coins have been added to the population report over time. This is in fact a 1945 D over horizontal D repunched mint mark, where the initial strike was placed on its side instead of upright. The mistake was then necessarily corrected by punching over that with a final D mint mark that we can now see, this time in the correct orientation. What appears to be the bottom rounding of the D can now be seen towards the left of the straight bar of the D, with additional evidence, ostensibly the top serif of the initial punching, peeking out on the opposite side towards the east. Now, this should be an extremely valuable coin if it is brought to market, but due to the challenges of its actual rarity, that seldomly occurs. An example was reportedly sold in 2010, graded MS65 for $809, but I was unable to verify that independently, so take that as you may. And then from there, we turn our attention to a double-die obverse coin from 1945 once again, but this time there is no mint mark, as the Philadelphia Mint was responsible for creating this, and the variety in question is a quite unique double-die obverse coin to look for. Now, doubling is rather clear on the date of the coin, displaying in a largely south-southwesterly direction, since there's no major doubling on any other elements of the design, with only extremely minor doubling diminishing as you move further away from the date, as with the Y of Liberty, for instance. Pivoted hub doubling is the clear culprit in this case. Another coin which value seems to be in flux, or well, at least up for debate, as price guides would indicate $700 to perhaps $1,000 for a mint state example. A coin which was graded as MS62 was in fact sold more than a decade ago for almost $1,000 at auction. However, when a new example was brought to public auction only in 2019, it only managed to raise a scantly $61 by comparison. 1931 is the host of our first coin, and the Denver Mint is responsible for striking these 1931 D double-die obverse Mercury dimes. There are a few minor points of interest to point out on this coin, most of which are relatively minor and difficult to spot if we're being completely frank about it. So primarily what you want to look for is the doubling that is found on the date, specifically the bottom of the flag of the first number 1, the second number 1 too, but to a lesser extent. Here you'll be paying close attention to the base of the number instead. Similarly, the tail of the number 9 should display very attractive separation lines, with the lower half of the 3 displaying in a much similar fashion as well. During 2017, a coin like this one was sold at auction slabbed by PCGS as MS66 with full bands for $881.25. And then for a variety coin that is criminally underrated, not to mention woefully undervalued in the market, if you ask me. But all the same, the coin in question is the 1940S over S repunched mintmark Mercury dime. There are actually multiple repunchings of this coin, and not just a simple S over S, but the third and quite possibly fourth impressions pale so far in comparison that they warrant mention only as confirmatory diagnostics rather than the main place of interest for coin hunters to look for. Instead, here, the main focus of your attention should be directed west of the main impression, to such a dramatic effect that it is almost unmissable to anyone even barely paying attention to such details at all. In 2021, a coin was sold at auction graded as NGC MS65 for $100 on the nose. Sadly, this is a fairly typical price point for these types of varieties, barely commanding a 2 to 3 times premium over the base coin itself. From there, we head west to the San Francisco Mint to locate the 1929 S double-die obverse dime. On this coin, most of the doubling is located on the date and the letters of "In God We Trust." But in my experience, these coins don't always have the best strike quality, so identifying the doubling on the "In God We Trust" part can be a bit tricky at times. So instead, focus your attention again on the date, where the doubling is significantly more straightforward. Doubling here can at times resemble strike doubling instead, but this is a rather unfortunate side effect of the strange tilted and offset combination hub doubling that resulted in the creation of this particular die. 2017 saw the sale of a coin very much like this at auction, authenticated by Anax with the grade of MS66 with full bands once again for the sum of $1,410. Subscribe to WNN and activate notifications with the bell icon to know when new videos are released. For the World Numismatic News, I am Numisman saying thank you for watching, stay safe, keep collecting, and have a fantastic day.